Hello everyone, it's Dr. Sam. I'd like to welcome you to my EyeClarity podcast. This is a show that offers cutting-edge information on how to improve your vision and overall wellness through holistic methods. I so appreciate you spending part of your day with me. If you have questions, you can send them to hello@drsamberne.com. Now, to the latest EyeClarity episode. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Sam, and I'd like to welcome you to another EyeClarity podcast. Well, today I'm going to give you a bird's eye view into a session I gave to a mom who's got a 12-year-old, and the dilemma is that she's got some vision problems, progressive myopia, a visual coordination problem called convergence excess. But the big thing is she has been doing physical vision therapy for over a year with some other doctors, and she still has the symptoms of her eyes getting really tired. Sometimes her eyes feel painful, and she's exhausted by the end of the day. So when I talk to the mom, we go through things like the prenatal period, the pregnancy, the birth, the first 3 years, bonding, and everything seemed to be pretty normal. And yet, here we are at age 12, and there's still unresolved vision problems. So what do you do? So in this session, I bring in the whole body, and I talk about cellular biochemistry and how we need more energy to be able to absorb any therapy that we might receive. One of my mentors, Dr. Al Sutton, he was a world-known developmental optometrist. He was practicing in Miami Beach, professor at Berne College, and I studied with him for a long time. And one of the things that he taught me, which I still use today, is the fact that before we start with any child in any kind of physical therapy program, we want to get an assessment of their nutrition and, if we can, order a lab test where we can see what is the nutrient absorption like, are there any heavy metal toxicities, and in figuring that out first, that is number one. If you can improve the energy and the biochemistry on a cellular level, then the child is more available to receive the therapy and make the changes developmentally that we're asking them that they need to do. Because it takes an incredible amount of energy to go through any kind of therapeutic process. And if you're depleted, you're just not going to get very far. So in this session, I talked to the mom about some different ways to go about, helping her child. And for any parent out there who's got a child and they just don't know what's going on, this could be really helpful. So I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for tuning in. The way I see it is that, especially in children, and learning in school, we have the sensory motor systems, and there's a developmental arc where we, as kids, we learn through movement how to integrate our sensory motor development. Mm-hmm. Our eyes, our ears, our proprioception, and then that leads to spatial decision making, and then some of the cognitive skills, executive function, memory, and, spelling and math and all that stuff. And it does start with the primitive reflexes. Those are kind of the foundation. And, there's the Moro and the fear paralysis reflex. They tend to go together. And then you have the TLR and the spinal gland. There are about 5 or 6 of them that profoundly affect vision development. And so there's that piece, the reflex work, the vestibular work, the bilateral integration, which you talk about. And so when there are eye problems, at some level on either primitive reflex or gross motor level, vestibular as well, there's some delay, there's some developmental delay that's interfering with the visual development to really click in. And it sounds like she's got some of the visual skills, but if she's still having the visual symptoms, then at some point, the foundational motor, whether it's reflex or gross motor, are not really solidified. So there's that piece of it that's happening. And so things like convergence excess or myopia are muscular and stress reactions, adaptive responses, because the demand that's being placed on her is too high based on her skill set.
Right.
So she's got to compensate in some way. And so what vision therapy is supposed to do is help fill in the gaps of where the motor development maybe is missing, and then to improve the visual skills so that the vision is effortless, and that allows the brain to then absorb the information, and there's good output, and there you go. There's another part of it that has to do with cellular function, and I'm talking about systemic metabolic, that at some level, if the energy is draining out and it's partly visual, there's still a lack of resiliency on a cellular level of being able to absorb nutrients even better. And the better the nutrients, the more energy, the better the detoxification pathways. And without having that really strong cellular health, then all the therapies that you can offer, all the physical therapy, vision therapy, they don't work as well because the person doesn't have enough cellular energy to learn what they're needing to learn. So the cart before the horse, you want to really make sure the cellular energy is working at a high level before you present physical therapies, occupational therapy, vision therapy. So there could be partly a cellular lack of nutrient absorption. It's not what you're feeding her, but it's just is she absorbing as well as she could be? Is there an autoimmune thing? Is the digestive system, is there inflammation? Obviously, stress is going to bring more of that. And, the gut and the eyes, the gut and the brain are very interrelated in a lot of ways. And then you can bring in the nervous system. Is she more sympathetically nervous system focused? Again, if you're spending more time in the sympathetic nervous system, you're going to burn out faster. And so where's the parasympathetic nervous system part of it? Sleep, relaxation, digestion. And so if the adrenals are involved, then, there's sympathetic overdrive. And, again, there's this whole syndrome of too much overload in the system. And then there you go. It creates some obstacles in the reading and learning. The thing is, at this point, she's done so much vision therapy, she's probably kind of burned out from it.
Yeah.
And
into that
to
state.
say, okay, here's more, you don't really have a willing participant. It's like she's not going to buy in very easily because she's done so much of it. And so we have to bring that into the equation, because for me to say, okay, here are more exercises to do, this is what you need to do, I don't think you're going to get a buy-in from her. So the question is, how do we solve the problem? How do we inspire her to move to the next level in her development, her performance, reduce the stress, have her learn more self-regulation. It's all those things. It's a part biochemical, probably. So that's going to be, how do we figure that out?
Right.
And
makes sense.
You and I are going to work together and brainstorm that, and we're going to navigate the least resistance. So that's kind of how I see what's happening. But we have to be very careful and artful about what we might present, because she's overloaded. She's, with all that vision therapy, you would think you would have more results. And that's where, on a cellular level, something still is not clicking. So one of the tools, and again, there's lots of different ways to the top of the mountain. So when I present stuff, you get to veto it. You can say, yeah, no, I've done that. One of the things that we could consider is doing some kind of a lab test. And what I would opt for at this point is something like a hair mineral analysis.
Okay.
And the reason why is that in a hair mineral analysis, we get to see on a subtle level the mineral ratios. And what a hair test tells us, the internal representation that the person is going to show us in a hair test is how they deal with external stress. Like their life and their lifestyle that they're living in, the hair test is going to show you their adaptive responses on a trace mineral level, on a digestive level, on a heavy metals level. It's not 100%, but it's a subtle enough test that gives you a broad enough snapshot that you're going to get some information. Like, for example, I would probably predict that, number one, she might have some kind of sensitivity to carbs. And when she has carbs, it kind of depletes her even more. And that would show up in the calcium-magnesium ratio.
Okay.
Or the sodium-potassium ratio would tell us about her adrenal health. Or phosphorus, that trace mineral, will tell us, okay, how is she absorbing her protein? She's getting enough protein. Is she absorbing it? Mm-hmm. And then we could look at some other trace minerals like chromium, which is sensitive to carbohydrate metabolism, or heavy metals. We could see, has she been exposed to, any of that? And there are other indicators as well. Now, if you don't want to do a hair mineral, and maybe you have access to that,
no, I think that's great.
You could do it through me. I could send you a packet, and it's very non-invasive. You just cut some hair from the nape of the neck, and you fill out a health history, and then you send it into my lab, and then we get a result. But it's a roadmap to some degree. We're not guessing what is needed. She's probably at some level, on a cellular level, been depleted for a while. In the regular pediatrician world, unless it's I have friends and colleagues who are, and they're women, they're holistic pediatricians, and they're not in your area. They kind of get that. But mm-hmm. in a regular allopathic situation, it's not something that they're focused on. They're focused more on, the big diseases and,
right.
Blood and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
a lot of that kind of stuff. But no, I mean, that sounds great. We definitely.
So I think we ought to start there, because whenever I see somebody who's done any kind of therapy, occupational therapy, vision therapy, and they're not getting the results, then there's a problem on a cellular level where the person's energetic availability is not there to absorb the level that they need to make the changes. Because at some level here, even if it's a small situation, she's not connecting what to do with her body and how to use it in a way that really allows her to work optimally. Like this left side, right side thing. This is a pretty big issue.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be that she's using more of her right side or her right eye, using more of her left brain. So, in other words, if we were going to do any vision therapy, and that's a big if,
Right.
probably the two things that I would focus on would be maybe doing the Moro reflex integration. I don't know when the last time you did that. The Moro that I do is called the Moro starfish. Does
Okay.
that ring a bell? Does that ring a bell to you?
No,
Did you?
that doesn't ring a bell. No.
Okay. So, just a little background for me. I had a wonderful mentor from Florida who was a fantastic developmental optometrist, and we went to Scandinavia, he and we studied with those eye doctors who had been doing the primitive reflexes since 1975, and we really learned the importance of the reflexes as it relates to vision. And it's been slow to distill that information into, the vision therapy practices. I think it's happened. I mean, this is 25 years ago,
Right.
but I work with a lot of OTs, and so primitive reflexes are whole part of the whole thing. And I work a lot with something called yoke prisms and other things as well, color therapy.
Okay.
So I'm going to demonstrate the moral reflex because this is being recorded. And then the other one that you might consider would be doing some bilateral movement things in an obstacle course.
Okay.
Now, have you guys done any bilateral movement in obstacle courses? And what I
So,
mean by that is setting up, chairs and pillows and
right.
having her move her through the world. She could kick a soccer ball, she could dribble a basketball, and then having her do, say, maybe some skipping. But where I want her to go with this is develop her back body and learn to hop and skip backwards.
It's backwards.
It's the going backwards that stimulates that back body, which makes the whole brain work. And the vision center is actually in the back part of the brain. So when we do a lot of motor stuff. In fact, I don't even do like eye movements and things until much, much later, and we do very little of it. We do some of it, but we really spend time with kids in the reflex world, in the vestibular stimulation world, and in the motoring through space, with having them visually guiding and directing their movements so that they're connecting their vision with their body as they're moving. And with things like hopping and skipping and galloping, they have to get as proficient going backwards as they are going forwards. And in fact, if we were in person, I would probably ask Evelyn to see what her skipping backwards is. And, this may or may not be true, but it may be difficult for her to skip backwards. I don't know.
I think
Or
it
motor backwards.
probably would be.
And so that really develops the whole brain. So this obstacle course situation, you can do it with a bike, but it needs to be slow, turning. You can do it with a soccer ball, like, kicking around different things, because we want her to get better at using her vision to move her body through the world. That's really what the definition of vision is. And I wouldn't worry as much about the reading and the handwriting and the academics, because she is operating in a different time space than, say, other kids. And we have to honor her rhythm. And at some level, there might be too much demand on her. I don't know. And
there was quite a bit, and then we had
we
switched.
need to pull back. Yeah, we need to pull back on that.
Okay.
Because that actually does more harm than good. I'm very sensitive to that. She may be an incredibly creative individual that is just operating at a different rhythm and timing.
Very, very creative, and always, always very, very creative.
And so with the creativity, what I would do is that I would spotlight that one, because that might actually give her some more juice.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to demonstrate the Moro reflex, and then I'll send you some. And another thing is you're not that far at some point to come up here, and we could do like a 2-hour session. I mean, I got to tell you, at this point, when I work with people, it's 6 sessions.
Okay.
Now I'm doing the vision therapy, but going as long as you. There's crawling, there's galloping. So this would be galloping. This would be skipping, but you see, I'm really getting my upper body and my lower. None of this.
Coordinated.
She's really got. Okay, and there's hopping, and so the key is you would be setting up an obstacle course somewhere. Again, pillows, chairs, whatever. Maybe you do it first and then she does it. And I really want her to motor backwards. And so she's motoring backwards, and there's a real engagement of the bilateral integration.
That's part of it.
So that would be, if you can get her to buy in with those things, that would be great.
She likes to do that kind of
Bike
stuff.
riding, soccer, basketball. Does she play tennis?
She does not play tennis. We do play basketball and ride bikes. And so
things like badminton, like getting into an eye, and you say she's good at eye hand, but I'd have her use her opposite hand.
Yeah, I was like, it's good eye hand on, dominant, but.
Yeah. But so we want to engage that left side more.
Okay.
So have you guys ever used these?
Oh yeah, we have lots of those. Mm-hmm.
Parquetry blocks.
Those are fun.
So one of the things that I learned, I worked with a guy named Dr. Wax, W-A-C-H-S. He's not alive anymore. And I studied with Dr. Wax. He was from Pittsburgh, and he was a really great developmental optometrist. And he worked a lot with the Piaget method. But with the blocks, I'm going to send you kind of a sequence. So let me just explain. Like you and she would each have the same 4 blocks.
Okay.
And you would sit back to back, and you would build a design, and you would have to explain to her how to make the design, but she couldn't look at yours. She'd have to do it from an auditory verbal. And then she would do the same thing. She would make a design, and then she would explain, describe to you how to make it. Another way to do it would be to blindfold her, and I'll send you the directions on this. I'm just giving you the highlights. Blindfold her, and you would Scotch tape like 4 blocks down on a piece of cardboard. She would feel yours, and then she would make hers based on feeling yours. So there's a visual memory. Yeah. Okay. And so there's a couple of ways that we can use those blocks, but that would be, there's like 4 or 5 ways that are really great that you could interact with her that might be slightly different than what you've been doing with the parquetry. And it's very cognitive driven, but it's also visual, auditory, motor. So it's like, it's really good. So, and I would say those would be, the highlights, for now. And then let's get the hair test. And I think it's going to be, okay, we're going to find some deficits, and then we'll have to decide what's the best way to supplement here. Would it be in a morning, smoothie drink? Would it be, right. She is starting now with capsules, but there are a lot of different strategies and great companies that, it's like she almost needs like a really big boost in the morning of
Yeah,
something
kind of
to
like a
get
big boost of something. And I definitely can see that
going.
it's, deficient in something. It's just hard to tell what.
Well, this is where the hair mineral analysis, we're going to get a test of all the minerals, and the minerals are the spark plug of the cells, and it's a much more subtle test. So we get to see things that are like a little deeper than, say, on blood work as a 24-hour snapshot, and unless there's a
Right.
huge deficit, everything is
No,
fine.
yeah, I mean, to me, that's really fascinating. Since her dad does have Addison's, which, since it's such a rare autoimmune disorder, I think there's always a root cause. So that was something too. I wanted to make sure whatever she might be deficient in doesn't end up in something like that later on. So no, that's definitely very interesting.
You can put that in on the health history when I send you that. Father has Addison's. And of course, some of my patients that do the best with the autoimmune are when they really cut out the inflammatory foods. That seems to be
like
such
dairy and gluten. Yeah.
And dairy and gluten, yeah. And dairy, gluten, and high glycemic sugar stuff. If you think there's a hint of autoimmune, I'm not sure that there is, but
I'm not
there's
sure
something
there is, but I'm not sure what.
But cellularly, she should be farther along based on the vision therapy that was presented to her. And that's why I think the hair mineral test is probably will help us with some of the missing links. And then what I would like you to do, if you could email me what the computer reading prescription is, like what is she using? And also
the reading script. I do have it in front of me.
Oh, okay. What is it?
It says OD plus 0.50 in the sphere.
Okay.
OS plus 0.50.
Okay.
And then in the notes, it just says Trivex only, no polycarbonate, and blue light blocker.
Okay. That's a good prescription. With that prescription, it tells me that they aren't worried about the myopia because at a plus 50, if she had more myopia, then that prescription would be much different.
I think it seems like she seemed more concerned with the size of the eyeballs.
The size of the eyeballs.
The size of them.
So the size. Mm-hmm.
That's what she seemed most concerned with. But
size. So there's two parts. There's structure and function. I tend to lean more towards function, like what's the functional health as opposed to the structural health. As long as the pupils are responding to light, she's not light sensitive. Unless the eyes are like bulging, and that would suggest some kind of a thyroid issue. I'm not sure about that. I mean, certainly,
I didn't see any. I haven't seen any bulging or anything like that. I'm
more interested in the balance between the two eyes and being able to come into visual midline, and that's where that Moro starfish could relax that because a convergence excess and myopia is just a muscling. I'm over muscling to compensate because I either don't have the skill set, I don't have the energy, or you're giving me too much, or the demand is too much. So that tells you, okay, we is what we're giving her. We need to regulate that, kind of watch her nervous system so that we're not overwhelming her to the point where she's completely stressed out. And
I think that's kind of where we are.
So, okay. So what I'll do is I'm going to send you, I'll send you written directions on the Moro and this bilateral movement thing and the parquetry, and you'll get the recording. And then I'll mail you the hair packet. And it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you've got any questions, just give me a call. So we'll take care of that. And then maybe let's talk again I don't know, after the hair test comes back.
Okay.
Once I get it, I can contact you. And then by that time, you might have a little data on, introducing the Moro and the bilateral movement
Sure, how that's been
stuff,
going. Okay.
how that's going. And we'll get there. We'll get there. I think it's more at this point is we need to tweak subtlety. Like there's been a lot of the good news about the vision therapy you've done is there's a really strong foundational basis of what you've done. And so now what we're going to do is be as efficient as we can to kind of tie it up so that she's fully integrating and absorbing what she's been doing. And part of that might be biochemical as well. But I think
that's a really interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we can see about the color therapy. There are ways that you can do the color therapy very inexpensively. I've been doing color therapy for a long time, so I've developed. You don't necessarily have to get some big light, but that could be helpful down the road also. But
yeah, no, I'm definitely open to all the different light therapies and stuff like that. I always find a lot of that very fascinating. Like I said, though, but after a year, I was like, I'm a little suspicious if we're throwing that in too. Like it's, Yeah. But
I think at that point, the way I would see it is I would do the biochemistry first before you start. Mm-hmm. That covers the base. And I would do the color therapy first as well, or early. What the color therapy does is it balances the nervous system and it can open up the peripheral vision and relax the brain.
Okay.
So, that energetic healing can be really great. Absolutely. It's just, the point when it was introduced was kind of like, I would have done it a lot sooner, but I don't do long processes anymore because it doesn't take that long. It's like we kind of get to the root and we just go for it. And in some of the regular vision therapy practices, it's a lot slower. Either, I don't know if the doctor was in the room or the doctor does the therapy or he or she hires vision therapists, and then it becomes this whole, business model. So
yeah, the business model always makes me nervous sometimes.
Yeah, we're staying away from business model. We want to help you.
I do appreciate that. I do.
As parents, it's you got a lot of expenses. So anyway, let's go this direction, and then feel free to email me any questions you have. And again, I'll send this stuff to you by the end of the day, and just start exploring it. When you can, don't push too hard. If you can do it every day, every other day, every third day, you're gonna have to negotiate that. She's burned out from the whole scene.
Very burned out, and they require homework and stuff, and that's been a big burden. Because at her school they don't. She's at an acting academy, and they don't require homework. It's all very no shoes, play. So homework
we want to bring
stressful.
This next level of the vision work, we want it to be more playful.
Absolutely. Makes sense.
More fluid, more flow, more whole body. Let's make it creative. Well, I'll tell you what, if you step back, you might actually take 10 steps more later on.
I've noticed that. I pulled her at a standard school, and we took, one step back, and then it was like leaps and bounds ahead once I pulled her from that setting. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So that's really what you're looking at. She's going to do it her own way. She's very unique. And we kind of have to just nurture that trajectory and not impose so much onto it, because she's going to pull back. She's not going to be available. Yeah. So this is a key point, before we end the podcast. There's no cookbook approach. And sometimes when you go into these busy physical vision therapy offices where, they program you and you go twice or 3 times a week and you're working with a vision therapist, sometimes there isn't room to improvise and, meet the child where he or she is. And in this particular case, To get to the bottom of it, it's going to be a combination of doing some primitive reflex integration and working with the bilateral movements with visually guided, obstacle courses to help her integrate her eyes and vision with her body. It's amazing to me the number of kids I've worked with is when I help them reconnect their eyes to their brain and body through movement that they just take off. But the first thing we're going to do is the biochemistry and see what her body is adapting to in terms of stress. And then from there, we're going to do some kind of a support, supplementation, and or diet to see if we can really boost cellular energy. And then we're going to do some very targeted, specific physical vision therapy things. We may do light and color therapy as well. We may do a little craniosacral therapy. We'll just see. But anyways, thanks for tuning in today. And that's our show. And until next time, everybody, take good care. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something from the EyeClarity podcast show today. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. See you here next time.